Are you ready to resist the Trump agenda? Then you're at the right place on the dial. Welcome to the Chip Evans Show, home of empowering progressive talk and Reno's Resist Radio. Now here's Chip Evans.
Dedicated to help the economy and...
Hello. Welcome to the Chip Evans Show here at 96.1 FM, 1270 AM The Buzz. Good morning, Craig. How are you?
Apparently you didn't have your headphones up to hear your daughter introduce you.
Not enough, yeah. I always get in trouble when I don't pay attention to my daughter talking to me. So.
Daughter, wife, dog.
You know Andy, okay. I'll tell you what, this is going to be a terrific show. We're going to talk about the environment. We're going to talk about gun safety. We're going to talk about our federal workers. So this might be a good show to call in. If you're so inclined, the number is 775-823-1920. That's 775-823-1920. I'm trying to remember what happened in the year 1920. I wasn't here, but it must be something significant, obviously. So invite you to call into that. Let me give you a little bit of a preview of the show here. In the first hour, Rebecca Ann Cantley, Lindsay Judd, and Rebecca Stetson are here. Jennifer Ann and Lindsay are here talking on behalf of Moms Clean Air Force, and Rebecca Stetson is here to represent the National Wildlife Federation, but we're going to discuss the environment in general. The second hour begins with a local friend of mine, Eric Gerken, and the national president, J. David Cox of the American Federation of Government Employees, will be here to discuss the administration's attacks on our federal workers, which includes our precious VA employees here in Reno. And we're going to end the show with Christiane Larson Brown, who returns to the studio here. You may remember her from their KJFK show days. And Kimberly Cardin is going to join us as well. Christiane is amongst the new founders of the new Northern Nevada chapter of the Brady Campaign. And Kimberly Cardin is a board member of the Nevada Gun Safety Coalition. We'll talk about the recent mass shootings and the work to reduce death and injuries from gun violence. And no, they're not here to take your guns. They're here to help reduce the deaths and injuries that come with gun ownership. And they are a lot in America. So again, you're invited to join us by calling in 775-823-1920. One of the things you may notice about the show is that we're not doing our standard news talk section this week. You know, it occurs to me that there's so much that goes on in Trump's Twitter sphere, and the news moves so quickly and is so full of evolutions in Mr. Mueller's investigation and changing international relationships. That we lose track of really everyday living issues. They don't get the attention they deserve. And, so I just want to set that aside for today. Not that we're not talking about important issues that are current, but I want to get past some of the short-term noise and look at some of the big, longer-term issues. And if there's ever a longer-term issue affecting all of us, it's the environment in general. So with that, let me introduce you to Jennifer Ann Cantley and Lindsay Judd and Rebecca Stetson. Jennifer, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself first, and I understand you're kind of the ringleader for the Moms Air Force here.
Yes, we are Moms Clean Air Force, and we are a community of moms, dads, I like to say moms, dads, aunties, uncles, anyone that wants to protect the future for children and having clean air and clean water, so for children's health. We are in over 42 states, so we like to say we're 1 million moms and dads strong across the nation. And I just helped open the chapter here in Nevada in August, so we're getting it rolling in Nevada right now. So we're still kind of new here in Nevada, so that's why everyone hasn't heard of us. But by the end of the year, I think a lot of people are going to know who we are.
Well, Jennifer Ann, I'm always kind of curious what kicked you into gear about the environment being an issue, because you're a busy mom of 5 and certainly have a fascinating personal history of things that you do. And, but what brought you this focus?
Well, I actually started, I studied shamanism in Peru. With the environment, and actually became a shaman over the years. So I have a deep, profound love for our Mother Earth. And then as a mother, my middle son has asthma that's specifically triggered from smoke. So as I started learning more about that and what we could do to prevent not having as many bad forest fires, especially here in Nevada, I started investigating on more what I could do. So I like to say I planted the seed that I wanted to be helpful out there. And I was found by the Environmental Defense Fund with Kara Kelly down in Las Vegas. And she's like, well, we have this wonderful group called Moms Clean Air Force. Have you ever heard of it? And I said, no. And so she goes, well, I'm going to connect you. I got on the phone, had a great conversation, and they asked me to fly out as a volunteer to DC to go speak to our representatives. Mind you, I've never, ever done anything like that before, but I was on a plane within a week.
All of a sudden, you're one of those crazy activist types,
all
right?
of a sudden, I'm like, what did I get myself into?
Oh,
But it was amazing getting to sit down with Congressman Amadei, and I didn't get to sit down with Heller himself, but I got to get in his office and kind of see how my voice could be at a use. And they were telling me, oh, well, the Republicans don't really want to hear anything about the environment, but just tell your personal story. And I was able really to connect with Congressman Amadei and let him know that as a mother, I can't sleep at night when we have these forest fires, and my son wakes up and I can't sleep during the night. So I want to know what our government's going to do to prevent these wildfires and what we can do about it, and how he's voting towards climate change. And to hear that Amadei heard my voice and a couple other groups that have come in, and now he's on the climate change caucus, and he's also now just did a carbon bill for Nevada, carbon tax bill, and he's working with moms on that as well. So it's amazing to see that my voice and a mom of 5 can actually do something.
In your story about your son, I'm reminded of something that we forget sometimes. The first image I had when you said, well, my son's allergic to smoke, I'm saying, well, I don't know, maybe you got to wear a mask every now and then, or maybe you just control people aren't smoking in your home, or you don't do fires at the fireplace or something like that. But it reminds you that, the things that affect us about the environment come from so many places beyond our control. Could be the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And that's the environment we live in.
Yeah,
This
we
is
all
something
breathe the same air.
We share on the planet. Well, that's a good. Well, Lindsay, let me talk to you. Lindsay Dads here, and welcome back, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for
Lindsay,
having me again.
what kicked off your involvement in the environmental community?
I grew up in the pristine redwoods of California, and
and beautiful they are.
Beautiful, right? And then after college, I went to South Korea, which was wonderful, such an amazing experience. But also, in spring, there's a yellow dust season. So bad air comes down and kind of fills up South Korea, and you have to stay indoors for most of spring, which is a shame because the blossoms are out and it's beautiful, and it's hard to not be outside. But I have my first son was born in South Korea, and he got pneumonia at about 6 months old. And as a new mother in a foreign country, it was a terrifying experience, but it also lasted for an extended period of time. So he had pneumonia for a really long time. And so he has breathing issues. And so air is something that concerns me,
Wow.
So
Are you prepared to connect dots and say there's cause and effect? The environment there kicked off this pneumonia?
Yeah, no, and I was told, that was
It's a
the
thing
belief.
there.
It's a thing there,
Oh
when the air quality is 500, you don't go out, under 100 is okay, right? 500 close to 1,000 is ridiculous, and that's the air quality that they see there in South Korea in the spring.
And how'd you find out about the Moms Clean Air Force?
I'm not totally sure.
I think it was social media.
Yeah, I'm an avid Facebook user.
Okay.
And so I started going with Jenny Ann to various meetings. We met with, we went to a town hall with Amadei, and that was exciting. That was like kind of my first public appearance, and getting to talk about how environment affects, communities in poverty. And that was a really great moment for me.
With her baby on her back. She was so powerful. It was amazing.
And she's got beautiful kids. I've
Yes.
met them both. So, hey, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Rebecca. I'm a native Nevadan. I like how you asked these guys kind of how they got into it, so I'll play a little bit off of that before we break. So I'm one of 11 children, and my mother and father, specifically my mom, she was the one home with us most of the time, and my dad worked several jobs, but she always instilled in us a huge love for and responsibility for the earth. And so we had quite a few animals growing up, and so we got kind of that firsthand experience of really nurturing other things, and then we had all of each other to take care of. And as interesting as it is, because it's not necessarily a corporation that I believe in anymore, but I was a Girl Scout for a long time. And it was a huge part of what made me into the environmentalist that I am, is all of these principles that we were constantly learning that were basically, you know, that it's not just you that you take care of, that you're supposed to be responsible for your impact on everything else, and that we are directly interconnected. And I say that I don't really support it anymore because I found out recently that these two lovely girls went after the Girl Scouts, they were Girl Scouts, to try to get them to stop using palm oil because of what a just disastrous crop it is. And the Girl Scout Corporation would not stop using palm oil in their Girl Scout cookies. And I was like, wow, you know, this thing that taught us all these things to be responsible for Mother Earth, but then, you know, this pinnacle of their, you know, what makes them their most money, they're not willing to really, you know, choose the planet over those profits, which is frustrating to me. So that's a little smidgen of where I came from.
I was thinking you were going to tell us I was one of 11 kids. It was something in the water. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a break and we'll be back.
96.1.
Tell me a little bit about your the National Wildlife Federation and your involvement with them.
Yeah, so I came on with the National Wildlife Federation just in September, so I've been with them for 6 months as a consultant, and I do the climate change outreach for Nevada, and so it's an interesting position. Basically, a lot of my work is geared towards getting awareness around national issues here locally and getting our leaders, our political leaders, business leaders, religious leaders to, you know, have a voice and speak out about, you know, what we're seeing with all the different legislation that we're up against, like the CPP rollback and the cuts to the EPA and everything in between. And so it's been really neat to be able to put a very local spin on my work and really start to highlight some of the opportunities that we have here. And these ladies, Lindsay and Jennifer, have been instrumental in, you know, having that strong voice and having other strong women who are willing to speak out about what we're seeing as far as environmental pollution. For instance, the Carson River being a Superfund site that's not being remediated, or the fact that we have, you know, air quality issues in Washoe County. We have them handled pretty well and have a lot of progressive measures going on. But then in places like Mound House, where we don't have a lot of residents, we're finding that there's a lot of opportunity to stick up for the people there and to really be their voice and to move that forward. The National Wildlife Federation, we have a Nevada Wildlife Federation, which is our local chapter of the National Wildlife Federation. And with the National Wildlife Federation, we have a new program that just started called Artemis, which is specifically geared towards sportswomen, and getting more women involved in hunting and fishing and outdoor rec of that kind. And so that's a exciting new thing that the National Wildlife Federation has.
You know, I'm just full of lots of questions. I'm wondering if any of you are allowed to mention the word science in your work.
You know, as a consultant, it's really nice because I do have a little bit more freedom in my work. And so science, the National Wildlife Federation is also very strong in backing those things. And so a tricky part of my job initially was I know that the words climate change and global warming are very politically charged. And so oftentimes I'll lose people if I use that terminology. And so using things like, you know, what have you seen with the environment changing, and asking a lot of open-ended questions to folks who otherwise would be very turned off by that terminology, but who are very turned on and want to protect the environment, has been a neat way to go around it. But yes, I can use the word science.
I like to use science as backup and proof. So we have fact sheets that we give around. We say arm you with the facts because we like to say we're mom partisan.
Well, wait a second. You could mention science, and you can talk about facts.
Yes.
In Nevada, right?
In
Okay.
Nevada and the
Just
rest
wanna
of the
be sure.
country too.
Things are changing here, Chip.
There you go. I'm trying to keep up.
I'm going to jump in here. So when we were at the Amadei Town Hall, I said climate change.
Oh, yes.
You know, and there was a loud groan, like the whole room. And so it really is a lot about, you know, how you present it and who your audience is, right? Like you always want to tailor whatever it is that you're doing to your audience.
Yeah.
Well, certainly messaging, right?
Yes.
You know, one of the fascinating things that I just loved hearing from you, Rebecca, was local environmental issues. You know, it's one thing to talk about the bad air in Korea, South Korea,
Right.
or the haze in Beijing that you can't see through. These are things that, you know, we can kind of say, well, that's interesting. But, you know, right here we've got a river. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to put on a different hat, my non-National Wildlife Federation hat, and just my kind of local activist hat. So one thing that I am very concerned with locally is the fact that Storey County is the county where the world's largest industrial park is located. Storey County is a very, very small place. I feel like this was a very intentionally advantageous move for the corporations who are part of the industrial park. And although I don't have any hard-backed evidence because a lot of folks are afraid to stand up, I have heard from multiple folks who do some of the testing of the river for some of these corporations that we are seeing a higher level than what's allowed of total dissolvable solids in the Truckee River, downriver from where the industrial park is. And so it's something that I'm not able to work on directly through the National Wildlife Federation because my job is very specific with the things that I'm able to do. But it is something that we have talked about as a group, Jennifer and Lindsay and I, of, you know, what can we do? And it's always that tricky question of like, how much good can we do without cutting off our own nose to spite our face? And so it's a tricky position to be in, but it is when I was in Washington, D.C. the week before last to talk to our congressional leaders about the clean car standards rollback that they're trying to do. One of the things that I did put on the table was, you know, I really voiced my concerns about, you know, Storey County being such a tiny, tiny county, not in massive land, but as far as like the governing body and population, and what kind of oversight is actually happening with that few people, and then what can we do about it? And all of our congressional leaders were very open to talking about that. Specifically, Jackie Rosen and Catherine Cortez Masto were both, as they are, champions of being interested in sending emails out to me thereafter to say, like, you know, what do you think we can do, or what are some opportunities that you think that we have? So no strong political stance, but I think that there is help on the way.
Reason for concern.
Reason for concern.
I'm kind of curious about other local environmental issues that you imagine that people here in Northern Nevada would resonate with and maybe be surprised about.
Well, something that I'm like, as a Nevadan, I'm born and raised here too. I grew up in Douglas County. And with joining this, I didn't realize how many issues we did have going on, even with being very involved with the environment my entire life as well. I like to say it's out of sight, out of mind in Nevada. But in Lyon County is one of my main subjects that I've been really looking close at, because we have two Superfund sites in Lyon County. And one of them is the Carson River, we have a over amount of mercury in the river. And then the other one is called the Anaconda Mine. And Mr. Scott Pruitt from the EPA just came and did a tour of that mine, actually, and is now number 9 on the Superfund sites in the whole United States that need to be cleaned up as priority right now. And he just approved it on the 5th, actually. Went on a tour with Governor Sandoval. So those are really overseen. Even myself driving by them, you can't really see the pits themselves. You just see like this wall of dirt, and some people think they're even man-made lakes. So we just don't have the education going on in Nevada. I just took our management on tours throughout Lyon County, and I said, if you were a Nevadan driving here and I didn't give you this cool map of all the drilling that is happening right now between fracking and everything right here where we're driving, would you know it was going on? And they said, absolutely not. But if you look it up, just Google drilling in Nevada, just watch how close they are to Reno and Carson City and Douglas County. It blew my mind. So the Superfund sites are something that most people don't even know that it's actually a site that is the federal government has tested over. Sometimes it takes about 10 years to get all the proof to show that it's contaminating our lands and our water, which also contaminate our air. Because we're breathing that in when it's coming off of the land and the water. So that's something I really like to bring attention to. But also in Lyon County right now, there's an asphalt company that Moms is starting to work with right now that is about a mile and a half from a little lower class, neighborhood and a trailer park home, and it looks like a cloud. I always say Fern Gully, the movie, it reminds me of that smoke that just comes over all the houses and is laying. It smells like their streets are constantly being paved right now. And dogs are showing up with cancer. They can't grow plants in their own neighborhoods right now. Kids are having asthma attacks, and they've sued this company. It's the Tahoe Asphalt Company three times now, I think. I'm not positive on that, but the most recent one, he had a fine of $64,000, paid it, and just keeps going on about it. So that's something Moms is looking in right now too, as well, as far as an air quality issue in Lyon County. But it's these little things that the residents don't know about because they don't know the information and they're not educated. And that's something that Moms Clean Air Force is really trying to help with here in Nevada.
Nevada's such a beautiful place naturally. And I think the people in Nevada really appreciate the beauty and the wide open spaces. And we use those lands. If you're going to be a hunter, this is a good place to be a hunter. And you think environmental themes would track with them, and I think they do. I think you're right. It's about education. Tell you what, time to take a break. We'll be back. You're listening to the Chip Evans Show here at 96.1 FM, 1270 AM, The Buzz.
This is Stephanie Miller, and no, the guy that wants to kill me for the insurance money does not make me work on weekends. It's Saturday morning, so you get to listen to Nevada's only progressive talk show. Now here's Chip.
Well, welcome back, listeners. I'm here with Jennifer Ann Cantley and Lindsay Judd of Moms Clean Air Force and Rebecca Stetson from the National Wildlife Federation, discussing environmental issues here in the state of Nevada and also the key environmental issues being addressed at the national level at this time. And there are so many environmental issues. Are you disheartened by the dismantling of the federal regulatory environment around that's affecting our environment?
I am. I just got a wonderful report yesterday from the EDF, who I work with as well. And they,
EDF.
yes, the Environmental Defense Fund.
There you go.
I didn't know what that was either when I first started in this neck of the woods. But I actually got a report of what the EPA cuts, the new proposal from the Trump administration, and how it's going to directly affect Nevada. And I actually have the stats here, I'm just pulling it up. So they want to actually totally completely eliminate the dangerous runoff in the water. So that means when we have our fires and our floods, the programs that go after that to clean it up, they just want to eliminate it if this proposal does go through. Another one is the more code red days, which, if people don't know, like what Lindsay was talking about, we have under the Clean Air Act, they're supposed to report what our air quality is. And again, it's something I didn't know as a mother, especially with a child of asthma. This was very educational for me to understand that I could go to airnow.org and see what our air quality is here in Northern Nevada to know if it's a safe day for my son to go out and play with his friends or if I should keep him inside. So the grant that goes towards that for monitoring our air quality, they want to eliminate that program as well.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a surprise to people who've lived here a long time, but Reno itself is in a bowl.
Yes.
And there are times when all the yucky stays here. There's not sufficient wind to blow it out and move it along, and it can get hard to breathe here.
Yeah. And I always notice too, and we've talked about it amongst each other as well, when we have these storms that roll in, everyone seems to notice we all get the same type allergy, little cold thing that's going on. And that again is directly connected to our air quality. And most people don't connect those two.
Yeah.
They want to say, well, I've never had allergies.
Well, medically, I'm hearing more and more that people have to realize there's this compounding effect that will make you more susceptible to flus
Yes,
and colds.
exactly.
Because it's
Pneumonia.
actually, repressing your immune system and making you more of a target. So, it's not just one thing you have to worry about. It's the combination sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and often they ask me like how it's connected with like the EPA as well. With our fire departments, they're primarily funded by the EPA, our federal grants that we get that go to our fire departments. And if they keep getting cut, we're already down a certain amount. How are we going to send men out to do pre-burns and monitor our forests to make sure that we're not at a dangerous level? These are the men that work really hard for us.
And women.
And women, yeah, sorry, men and
Yeah,
women.
they're fighting forest fires for the BLM. So,
Yes.
a growing labor pool, I understand. So,
Yes, another reason why to go out and vote and make sure we're fighting for this.
yeah.
Yeah, you had said, are we disheartened? And I know that a lot of my cohorts and a lot of people who do environmental advocacy or just advocacy in general with this administration coming in, there has been, I wouldn't even call it a malaise. I think that would be being really soft, but a depression that's come over a huge amount of our advocates because they feel like a lot of their life's work has been flushed down the toilet. And I guess I have the good fortune of not being, I've been a social justice advocate for a long time and have been indirectly doing the work for a long time. And so I'm really encouraged by some local champions that we have. And I feel like we do have one of the most beautiful places in the world. And we also have some of the strangest, most wonderful, loving people of anywhere that I've experienced.
I think I'm in the latter category. No, I'm the strangest.
I love, we have a lot of weird, peculiar people, and I think it's a really beautiful thing. I think we have a lot of human beings who are willing to be themselves and who are willing to stand up and really have their voice be heard. And so one of those local champions, I came upon Charlie Moore, who's the chief of Truckee Meadows Fire Department, when I was releasing this mega fire report for the National Wildlife Federation back in October. And a few months later, we saw each other at a Reno City Council meeting, and he had asked me, like, I know you do consulting. Would you be willing to consult with the fire department about our green waste program? And so it's been really beautiful over the last few months to develop more fully their green waste program. Basically, they allow the general public to bring in their green waste 2 different times each year. And then they get that green waste, they make sure it's really clean, no plastic, stuff like that, and then they get it to a recycler. And the reason is because then they're doing, they're having less fire hazard around people's homes. They're improving air quality because then instead of putting out a ton of those burn permits for individual residences, it's not getting burned, it's going to a recycler and getting turned into compost. And so I was able to connect them with Full Circle Compost out of they're in the south end of Carson at the prison where they have a giant composting facility. And
by the way, those kind of facilities tend to have very efficient systems for cleaning the smoke and dealing with the fire.
Yeah, the fire department, Truckee Meadows does have an incinerator when they bring in that green waste. And so their goal, specifically, Charlie really wants to make his fire department exemplary as being a green business, especially a green NGO, a nonprofit government organization. And so he wants to reduce the amount of incinerating they're doing by just directly getting, trees, shrubs, bushes back into the earth as good compost. And effectively, we're going to be able to save, the fire department's going to be able to save a ton of money with this new partnership. And it'll increase the amount of green waste that they're able to take in. They'll be able to do it more often. And so it's just like, these are the full circle, beautiful things that...
And the air stays cleaner.
And the air stays cleaner, yes.
Right.
Everyone wins, yes. And then the other one, Charlene Albee, who's the director of Washoe County Air Quality, is a really amazing woman. And she told me in December about what we're doing in Washoe County to promote better air quality. And one of the programs is the Know Your Code program, which basically you go online anytime and see what the code is to know if you can burn or not. Because a huge amount of our pollution here in Washoe County is from wood-burning stoves. And then secondly, it's from idling cars. And so they did an education piece also where they talk about, don't leave your car idling longer in the winter because it does, that inversion that we get is largely because of that that extra idling time and then having more sitting around. And I know that she was in Washington, D.C. at the same time that I was in the last few weeks with a coalition across the nation of counties and cities that promote air quality. And so they're working really proactively trying to maintain what we have and make our air quality better.
Well, I actually have something to add here.
Yes.
This idling car things.
Yes.
There's this belief from a previous time and previous technology development that you needed to let your car idle a little bit so the oil could get up in the right place and stuff. Well, it turns out the new cars are set so they're ready to go as soon as you turn them on.
Wow.
They have automatic adjustments in the tuning of it so that it's not going to hurt your engine. So if you've got a car, and I don't know exactly what year it kind of flopped that way, but something newer than probably a 1985 or 90, you idling the car to protect your engine is no longer a thing. It's just wrong. So take off, go quick.
I'm glad you said that because I have gone back and forth in my head. I'm like, am I compromising my engine? What am I doing? And I think that we all have that like constant chaos of like, if we don't really know definitively, and in this age of like misinformation/information, I think I know I especially get caught up in like, am I doing the right thing?
There you go. I just saved the next conversion layer right
Thank
here.
Look at that.
There you go. Well, Lindsay, I have a question for you. Out of the people that are activists in the environmental groups and seeing the destruction of our regulatory environment and seemingly open our lands for drilling at every corner, has this depression in the community, is it going to translate into political activity?
I think so. I mean,
Are these people that are going to go get people out to the polls?
I hope so, right? There's always that hope. You see more people getting involved in different things. It feels like emotions are high, right? And kind of there's a feeling that there's a lot to be done and that there's a lot that we can do. And so everybody needs to get on board and start doing all these things. And that's actually one of the things that I've really enjoyed participating in Moms Clean Air Force is that I've got to build kind of a network with other groups. So there's the Citizens Climate Lobby of Reno. They're doing amazing things. There's Washoe Residents for Appropriate Planning, and while they're working mostly on development, they also have an environmental edge. And so they're really cool.
Good. I'm going to throw out the Chip Evans hypothesis here and maybe ask the three of you to respond to it. I believe that almost anybody that's been in Nevada for a while actually is very environmentally conscious, that they really enjoy the environment that they perceive that they have here. What they don't know would probably shock them, and I'm glad to have you on to share some of that. But then there's this element that's just caught up in corporatocracy, that in fact, it's anti-American to put any restriction on any business at any time. And there's some people who have just kind of bought into that, no regulations, less regulations. And one crowd, primarily the Republicans, are buying into that in a big way. And the Democrats are saying, no, it's about people first. Businesses serve people, not the other way around. And that's the core dilemma that we face in Nevada, is that there are some people who would put a new mine and jobs for that, or ahead of a longer term view of the environment. Is that a fair statement? Or?
I would say so. I mean, I actually test this theory in some levels when I'm speaking to Republicans, because I know if I say climate change, they're going to automatically shut down and not want to hear anything that I have to say.
Been pre-programmed.
But if I come in and I talk at it from the aspect of being a mother, and that's one of the things I love about Moms Clean Air Force, and just talking about my experience in here in Nevada and being a Nevadan. I love to go hiking. I love to go camping. I want to be able to go fishing down in the Carson River and not worry about the fish being full of mercury. I have to release the fish back in, and that's not what I was raised to do. I was raised to eat those fish. So now that fear is in the back of my mind. So just talking about that with local Nevadans and just talking about how we were raised and what we love to do, the fact of burning 1.2 million acres this year in fire season, and most of us weren't even able to go out for really good hikes because we had the cloud of smoke in all of our valleys, that it was dangerous. I mean, people probably still did, but if they knew how dangerous that is for their lungs, that you're actually taking in more bad elements and carbon in your lungs, then they probably wouldn't go. And that's why the education needs to come here. So I find if I just talk about my personal stories, then they're like, yeah, what could I do about that? And I just don't mention the word climate change. But then they start saying how it's all connected. And I feel like the communication, education, and the compassion between one another is what's missing.
Well, good words. We'll be back to talk about this some more after this break.
Hey, this is Corey Farley. I think this guy knows what he's talking about. You're listening to the Chip Evans Show, so pay attention. Now here's Chip.
Thanks for that, Corey. I'm here with Jennifer Ann Kenley, Lindsay Judd, and Rebecca Stetson. We had a great conversation during the break here. We're putting a new ad campaign together. You remember The More You Know from, what was that?
I think it's from Reading Rainbow.
Reading Rainbow.
The more you know, what are the words that follow that? I bet you Craig's got a few good ones in there, but I'm thinking the less you can sleep, the angrier you get. But I made a statement during the break to these three environmentalists that, you can make a very credible argument with a rational person anywhere on this planet and make the case that the number one issue for all of us and all of our survival is, in fact, the environment.
Yeah.
And yet, here we are focused on Mr. Trump's latest tweet or this little thing, that little thing, and I likened it to, somehow rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We've lost track of the big picture. And so I appreciate all of you for stepping up to keep the big picture alive. And I'm glad I just took time for News Talk this week on this show, which is what I suggest everybody do. Every now and then you got to turn the rest of that off for a moment and go back to some really critical prime issues that you can make a difference.
Yeah, I always feel like I compare it to like Godzilla is hiding in the forest, and that's climate change. And we all know about it. And then all of a sudden, when it finally comes out, we're like, where did you come from? And I rather see it before it gets to us and be prepared on that level. And it's really not that hard. We make it so much bigger. Like it comes to the consciousness thing, and it's like when you go in to clean your kitchen and you're like, this is going to take forever. I can't do this. It's so much. But then you clean it up and you feel so much better and everything is. And that's what I feel like we need to do with the environment. We're making it much bigger than a problem than it is. It's much easier to clean up if we all put our minds and hearts to it. It's not going to take that much, and it's going to provide so much extra on the other end.
Well, let's go back to the politics of the environment. It is like anything else, and much like what we've been discussing. There are so many different aspects of it that you could focus on, that you could lose the forest for the trees, and you can spread your energy so much that you don't make progress on anything. So I'm really kind of interested in what your perception is of amongst the environmental community and the activists that are engaged in political activity to change it and bring focus to specific issues. What is the key issue that the environmental community is trying to work through the political system at this time? And Rebecca, maybe I'll start with you because I know you're in pretty close touch with your national folks.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot on the table right now. It seems like there's, so many issues to be tackled. And I mean, the CPP rollback is a huge thing, the Clean Power Plan rollback. And basically, I mean, there's just tons of stuff that was put into play during the Obama administration to protect the environment that basically they're trying to roll all of it back. And so we talked a little bit earlier about how we choose profits over people. And that's something that we're consistently trying to fight for, is that big money, that specifically the oil industry is not able to just railroad everything that we put into place. I have a sister who's a doctoral chemist and works for the USGS and preserving our safe water. And she is in a place where she can't even speak out or write about her work in advocacy ways because she is terrified of losing her job. And so we have a lot of people in place where...
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yes.
So, one of the things the Obama administration did was it engaged in a lot of forward-thinking strategies to do major changes in the world's environment. So you had the Paris Accord, you had a power,
The Clean Power Plan.
the Clean Power Plan here in the United States, and so that's all forward-looking, and you know, all of that is typically suspect and perhaps fair game for the next president that comes in and his or her priorities. So, you know, we've lost that. Certainly, Mr. Trump went after anything like that and has pretty much nullified our progress, if not turned that back. And then we had some things that were simply already in place, you know, levels of inspection and people addressing issues, and people able to share scientific information and share information on the environment. And the Trump administration has gone in and blown that away, the existing stuff. So I mean, we are talking going backwards.
Yeah.
And then, to your point, Rebecca, you know, intimidating anybody who's involved with the science around environment. You know, you can't use the words climate change, thou shalt not tread on the oil industry. You know, they have just set a climate within what's left of the regulatory environment at the federal government to inhibit them from even letting us know that the sky is falling,
Right.
even when it is. So,
And it's really short-sighted. Nevada just came out with a new report that talked about the amount of revenue that we bring in for, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not outdoor recreation, but when people come here to experience the outdoors. I'm going to blank
Like
on it.
outdoor tourism.
Like tourism?
Yes, but tourism that specifically is for
Outdoors.
Yeah, for outdoors.
Yeah, I know. I can't think of the word right now either.
And it made more. That industry made more for our state than any oil did in the last year. And so, for Nevada specifically, you know, it's like if we're strictly looking at this as a business sense, then we have a huge incentive to protect our outdoor areas and our public lands because they're making us more money than these industries that are, you know, destroying, you know, that same thing. And
we are in the business of protecting the buggy whip industry. And there's no reason to be settled on oil.
I think there's also a
Fossil
little
fuels.
bit of fear and hurting, right? Like there are certain things that we need to accomplish. We have a bunch of people coming in and we need housing, right? For example, we here in Reno, we need housing. We need affordable housing. We need housing of any kind where people that are moving here, they can live, or the people that are here that are getting pushed out have another place to go. And so we're seeing our local officials to a certain extent also push things through, even though there are red flags on master plans and stuff like that, because we need housing.
Yeah, instead of
You know.
taking the time and looking out how it's going to affect the grander scheme.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you touched on there with fear, we talked a little bit earlier about, you know, what is the environment of advocacy? Do we see it getting better? And fortunately, anytime there's a lot of discomfort, that is the only time that we change. I swear when I die that I think that I'm
That'll
going to
be
be
the lifelong lesson on
well,
the
I'm most
tombstone.
fascinated with knowing, like, why does it take such humility and like such suffering before we're ready to really like incorporate and embody change. But this suffering that we're experiencing is leading so many people to come out. I've seen more courage than I've ever seen in my whole life. These two women from Las Vegas, Lisa and Laura, who are oncology nurses who came with us to DC to lobby, they were both soft-spoken, timid women that were very, you know, this, you could tell this was not something that was first nature to them, but they were tired of seeing their patients choking for air, and it was enough to get them politically active. And so that's what I see.
That's a good story. Okay, well, there's hope. Hey, really quickly, how do folks get a hold of your organization and to participate and support you?
Well, I want them to go to Facebook. We're building our page right now, Moms Clean Air Force Nevada. You can also email me at jcantley, CANTLEY, at momscleanairforce.org. And then if you get in touch with us, we are actually going out and fighting federally at the Clean Power Plan next week. These ladies are going with me, and we're standing up for the West Coast. So we have a lot of events like the Mama Summit and everything else. So we'd love to get more people involved.
That sounds great. Rebecca, how about people getting plugged in with your efforts?
Facebook's probably the best. Northern Nevada Climate Corps, CORP, is the place where they can find me.
Okay, well, thanks so much for being with me today. Good to talk about the environment. Can't lose track of it. It's probably the most important issue on the planet, what's left of it.